All right, let's talk about the world map. You know the one. It was probably hanging in your classroom growing up. A simple, familiar picture of all the countries and continents. But what if I told you that simple picture is actually one of the most powerful and misunderstood pieces of propaganda in human history?
So, is the world map lying to you? To put it bluntly, yeah, it is. The map you and I know so well isn't just a neutral scientific reflection of the planet, it's an argument. And today we're going to pull that argument apart to see what the map is really telling us, and maybe more importantly, what it's hiding. On the surface, what you see is just a tool, right? A flat map with some familiar shapes. But the reality is so much more complicated. It's a document that's been shaped by history, by power, by politics. Every single line, every color, every label is a choice. And those choices fundamentally shape how we see the world and our own place in it. To really get why today's map looks the way it does, we have to go back in time. Because right from the very beginning, maps have always been about more than just getting from point A to point B. They've been about defining the world from the mapmaker's very specific point of view.
I mean, look at this pattern. The ancient Babylonians, they drew symbolic maps of their cosmos, putting their world at the heart of everything. The Greeks centered their maps on the Mediterranean Sea, their economic engine. Centuries later, Chinese maps literally placed the Middle Kingdom smack dab in the center of the known world. The theme is pretty clear, right? The person holding the pen always puts themselves in the middle. This all leads us to 1569 and a single map that would pretty much define our worldview for the next 500 years. So this cartographer, Gerardus Mercator, he had a problem to solve, and he created an absolute masterpiece for sailors. By making the lines of longitude parallel, any straight line you drew on his map was a constant bearing. For navigating the seas, this was a total game changer. But to do it, he had to make a huge sacrifice. He had to stretch the land masses near the poles to an almost comical degree. And here it is, the most famous, the most jarring result of that decision. The map we all know shows Greenland as this huge, sprawling Arctic landmass, looking about the same size as Africa. But the reality? Africa is 14 times bigger. I mean, let that sink in for a second. You could fit the entire United States, China, India, Japan, and most of Western Europe inside the continent of Africa and still have room left over. This isn't just a tiny mapping error. It's a massive distortion with a huge psychological impact. You have to remember when this map was made. The Mercator projection came out at the peak of European colonial expansion. So it didn't just distort sizes. It centered Europe on the map and blew up its size relative to the countries in the southern hemisphere, in Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia. Whether he meant to or not, Mercator's map visually reinforced a story of European dominance. Okay, but this isn't just some dusty old history lesson. The same exact principles are at play right now, all over the world. Those neat, clean, permanent-looking borders on our modern maps, they are hiding some incredibly messy and often violent realities. You know, we tend to think of national borders as these ancient, almost sacred lines. But for so many countries, they're barely a century old. Think about the Middle East or huge chunks of Africa. Colonial officials in Europe literally took a ruler to a map and drew straight lines, slicing right through communities, lumping rival groups together, and planting the seeds for conflicts that are still raging today. Our maps love to show us a single official version of the world. But for millions of people living in places like Kashmir or Crimea, that official version is fiercely contested every single day, often at a devastating human cost. The map shows you a simple, clean line, but the reality on the ground is one of constant conflict. And even worse, it completely erases places like Somaliland, which operate as fully functioning states but are just invisible to the official map of the world. Every map is a political statement. Here's a perfect example: Taiwan. Is it a breakaway province of China, or is it a sovereign nation? Well, the answer on your map depends entirely on who printed it. A map from Beijing will show one thing.
A map from Taipei will show another. Most international maps just punt. They use a dotted line or a different color to avoid taking a side. The map isn't showing you a fact, it's showing you an argument.
But you know what? Maybe the biggest trick the traditional map plays on us isn't about what it distorts, but what it leaves out completely. The things that really define global power today are almost totally invisible on a standard political map.
In the 21st century, just looking at a country's land area is a terrible way to measure its power. Russia is by far the biggest country on the map, but its economy is smaller than Italy's. Real influence today is defined by things that a political map just wasn't built to show us.
Just look at Singapore. On a world map, it's a tiny little dot in Southeast Asia. You can barely even see it. But as a global hub for finance and shipping, its economic power is absolutely massive. A political map can't show you that reality. In fact, it actively misleads you about it. The real maps of our modern world are maps of flow. Just think about the smartphone that's probably in your pocket. The lines that connect the mines in the Congo, to the factories in China, to the designers in California, and then the container ship routes that bring it to you. That is a true map of 21st century power. And it goes way beyond supply chains. Where does real power lie today? It lies in who controls the global shipping lanes. It's in who owns the thousands of miles of undersea fiber optic cables that carry basically all of our internet traffic. It's in the command of financial networks where trillions of dollars zap around the globe every day. These are the true territories of our time, and you won't find a single one of them on a classroom map. So we've seen how maps bend the truth and hide where the real power is. But there's one last, really urgent problem we have to talk about. The physical Earth itself is changing so fast that our maps are becoming obsolete right before our eyes. For hundreds of years, mapmakers had a huge luxury. They could assume that the coastlines and the land they were drawing were more or less permanent. Well, that assumption is officially broken. Climate change isn't just an environmental issue, it's a cartographic force, actively redrawing the world map as we speak. Just think about it for a second. Entire cities, like Jakarta, are literally sinking and being abandoned. The ice melting in the Arctic is opening up brand new shipping lanes, kicking off a new geopolitical scramble for resources up north. Deserts are expanding, swallowing up farmland, and forcing millions of people to migrate. This is a new geographic reality, and it's going to demand a completely new kind of map. From Miami to Mumbai, the very ground beneath our feet is shifting. The lines on the map we thought were permanent are being washed away. And as the world changes and resources get scarcer, the political lines that we took for granted are going to be challenged and redrawn. And at the very same time, completely new territories are being built in the digital world, with their own economies, their own conflicts, and their own mapmakers. So you see, maps don't just reflect our world. In a very real way, they help create it. They shape how we see things, what's big, what's small, what's important, and what's even possible. Which leaves us with one final and, I think, critical question. If maps create our world, who gets to draw the next one?